It was just a 5-minute favor for a millionaire. Until she turned the script on him, asterisk rain hammered the streets of downtown Seattle like nature's own percussion section. Nora Blake pulled her worn cardigan tighter as she arranged the last of her handmade jewelry on the small folding table. The Saturday market was nearly empty, most vendors having packed up hours ago when the storm began. But Nora couldn't afford to leave early. Every sale mattered when you were 3 months behind on rent. She was securing a tarp over her display when expensive leather shoes appeared in her peripheral vision. Looking up, she found herself staring at a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine cover, despite being thoroughly soaked. His charcoal suit clung to his tall frame, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, and those striking green eyes held a mixture of desperation and determination. "I know this started as pretend," he said, getting down on one knee with the ring Rose had told Nora about. "But everything I feel for you is real. The way you see beauty in broken things, the way you loved my grandmother like she was your own, the way you make me want to be the man she always believed I could be." Nora's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Will you marry me for real this time? Not for 5 minutes, not for anyone else, but for us, for the life we can build together." Through her tears, she laughed at the memory of that desperate proposal in the rain. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, of course, yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Nora thought about Rose's final words, about naming their first daughter after her. It seemed impossible that so much love could come from such a desperate beginning, that a lie told to comfort a dying woman could become the foundation of the most honest relationship either of them had ever known. The small wedding took place in Rose's favorite garden, with Emily as maid of honor and a framed photo of Rose in the front row. Nora wore her grandmother's pearls and carried a bouquet made from flowers she'd grown herself. Damien cried when she walked down the aisle, remembering how his grandmother had insisted that anyone who could make him smile was family in there. Vows. They spoke about broken things becoming beautiful, about love growing in unexpected places, about the grandmother who had seen their hearts before they knew them themselves. They promised to honor Rose's memory by being brave enough to love fully, honestly, completely. 2 years later, as Nora arranged flowers for the grand opening of her first real shop, she felt a familiar presence behind her. Damien wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "She would have loved this," he said, looking at the space they'd created together. The shop was everything Nora had dreamed of, bright and welcoming, filled with her own work and pieces from other local artists. "She did love this," Nora corrected, placing her hands over his. "She saw it before we did." Above the register hung a small sign, "Rose's Garden, where broken things become beautiful." Below it, barely visible unless you knew to look for it, was a faded photo of a woman with sparkling green eyes and a knowing smile. That evening, as they closed the shop and walked home through the Seattle streets, Nora thought about the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. A desperate man, a woman struggling to survive. 5 minutes that changed everything. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if it had really been just 5 minutes?" she asked. Damien stopped walking and pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "Every day. Every day I'm grateful we'll never have to find out." As they continued home, neither of them noticed the gentle spring rain that had begun to fall, soft and warm and full of promise. It was the kind of rain that made flowers grow, that washed the world clean, reminded them both of the day their story truly began. Rose would have said it was perfect timing. She always did love a good love story, especially one that started with a little divine intervention and ended with happily ever after. "Need your help," he said without preamble, his voice carrying a slight tremor that had nothing to do with the cold. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." Nora raised an eyebrow. Continuing to pack her jewelry boxes. "Help with what exactly, and who are you?" Damien Cross. He ran a hand through his wet hair, looking more vulnerable than any millionaire had a right to. "I know this sounds insane, but I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend, just for 5 minutes." She almost laughed. Almost. But something in his expression stopped her. "Are you serious right now?" Damien glanced around the nearly deserted market, then back at her. "My grandmother is dying, She's in the hospital right now, and all she wants is to meet the woman I'm supposedly in love with. I've been telling her for months that I've found someone special because it was the only thing that made her smile during chemo. Nora's hand stilled on her jewelry case. You lied to your dying grandmother. I thought I'd figure it out. Find someone real. Make it true somehow. His shoulders sagged. But every woman I meet either wants my money or wants to change me. My grandmother doesn't have much time left, and I can't break her heart by showing up alone, the rain continued. Its relentless assault on the market's canvas coverings. Nora studied this stranger who'd appeared in her life like a storm himself. There was something genuine about his desperation, something that touched the part of her that had spent years caring for her own sick mother. What's in it for me? She asked quietly. Name your price. She thought of her overdue rent, her empty refrigerator, the art supplies she needed but couldn't afford. $2,000. Damien didn't even blink. Done. And I want to know exactly what I'm walking into? No surprises. He nodded eagerly. Grandmother Rose is at Seattle General, room 314. She's weak, but sharp as ever. I've told her you're an artist, that you're kind and funny, and that you make me want to be a better person. At least that last part might be true, Nora muttered, then immediately regretted the words when she saw his face soften. You'll do it? She looked at her meager display, then at this man who was clearly drowning in his own desperation. Against every rational thought in her head, she found herself nodding. 5 minutes. In and out. We pay me before we go in.
Ow! 20 minutes later,
They stood outside room 314. Damien had transferred the money to her account and bought her
A simple bouquet from the hospital gift shop. Nora smoothed her damp hair and tried to calm her racing heart. Remember, Damien whispered. Her name is Rose. She loves gardening, old movies, and anyone who can make me smile. Just be yourself. Myself got us into this mess, Nora replied. But she squeezed his hand reassuringly. The moment they entered the room, Nora understood why Damien had been desperate. The tiny woman in the hospital bed had the same green eyes as her grandson, but they sparkled with a life force that defied her frail appearance. When Rose saw them together, her whole face lit up like Christmas morning. Oh, Damien, she whispered, reaching out with trembling hands. She's beautiful. Rose's eyes fixed on Nora with an intensity that made her feel like she was being examined under a microscope. But instead of judgment, she found warmth and curiosity in the older woman's gaze. Come closer, dear, Rose patted the side of her bed. These old eyes need a better look at the woman who captured my grandson's heart. Nora approached slowly, acutely aware of Damien's tension beside her. She took Rose's outstretched hand, surprised by the strength still in those delicate fingers. Damien tells me you're an artist, Rose continued, her voice gaining strength. What kind of art do you create? Jewelry mostly, Nora replied, finding it easier to stick close to the truth. I work with recycled materials, turning forgotten things into something beautiful again. Like's eyes sparkled, like my grandson then. It was quite the mess when his parents died. Took a lot of love to help him see his own worth again. Nora felt Damien stiffen beside her, realizing there was more to his story than he'd shared. She squeezed Rose's hand gently. Sometimes the most beautiful things come from the most broken pieces. Wise words. Rose studied their joined hands. And how did you two meet? Damien's been mysteriously vague about the details. Nora's mind raced. This wasn't part of the 5-minute plan. She glanced at Damien, who looked like a deer caught in headlights. We met at the market, she said slowly. It was raining, actually. He looked completely lost, standing there in his expensive suit, getting soaked while everyone else ran for cover. I was lost, Damien said quietly, his voice carrying unexpected honesty. I saw her arranging these beautiful pieces, completely focused, like the storm didn't matter. She looked so ... peaceful. Rose's smile grew wider. And what did you do, my stubborn grandson? I bought every piece she had, Damien continued, warming to the story. Told her I needed them for gifts, but really I just wanted an excuse to keep talking to her. Nora stared at him, surprised by how easily the lie flowed, how it almost felt true in the way he told it. He spent an hour asking about each piece, wanting to know the story behind every design, because each one was like a little piece of her heart, Damien added, looking directly at Nora. I could see how much love she put into her work. Rose clapped her hands together weakly. Oh, this is wonderful. I knew there had to be something special about her. You've been different these past few months, lighter somehow. A nurse appeared in the doorway. I'm sorry, but visiting hours are ending soon. Rose's face fell. Already? But I've barely gotten to know her. Grandmother, we don't want to tire you out, Damien said gently. Nonsense. I haven't felt this energetic in weeks. Rose turned to Nora. Will you come back tomorrow? Please, I want to hear more about your art, and I have so many stories about Damien's childhood to share. Nora felt trapped. This was supposed to be 5 minutes, not an ongoing performance. But looking at Rose's hopeful face, she found herself nodding. Of course, wonderful. And Nora, dear, call me Grandma Rose. Anyone who loves my grandson is family. As they left the hospital, Nora and Damien walked in silence to his car. The rain had stopped, but the air still held the promise of another storm. That wasn't 5 minutes, Nora said finally. I know. I'm sorry. She just seemed so happy, and I couldn't. She's going to want me to come back every day, isn't she? Damien nodded miserably. Probably. Nora stopped walking and turned to face him. How long? Does she have? The doctors say maybe a few weeks, a month, if we're lucky. They stood under a streetlight, studying each other. Nora saw exhaustion in his face, grief he was trying to hide, and something else she couldn't quite identify. I'll need more money, she said finally, whatever you want. And I want the truth. All of it. If I'm going to do this, I need to know what I'm getting into. Damien leaned against his car, suddenly looking older than his 30-something years. My parents died when I was 16. Car accident. Rose raised me, put me through college, helped me build my business. She's the only family I have left. What kind of business? Tech consulting. I help companies streamline their operations. He laughed bitterly. I'm great at fixing other people's problems. My own life, not so much, and the girlfriend situation. Rose kept asking when I was going to settle down, have children. She wanted to see me happy before she... double quotes. He trailed off. I started making up stories. Little ones at first, then bigger ones. Before I knew it, I'd created this whole relationship. Nora processed this information. You realize this is going to get complicated, right? She's going to want details, want to get to know me. What happens when she finds out it's all fake? She won't, Damien said firmly. I won't let that happen. What about after? When she's gone and you have to go back to your real life? For the first time since they'd met, Damien seemed to have no answer. Over the next week, Nora found herself spending more time at the hospital than at her own apartment. Rose was a force of nature despite her illness, full of stories and questions and an insatiable curiosity about every detail of Nora's supposed relationship with her grandson. Tell me about your first kiss, Rose demanded during one visit. Her eyes twinkling with mischief, Nora nearly choked on her coffee. Damien, who had been reading nearby, looked up with barely concealed panic. Grandmother, he started, but Rose waved him off. Hush. I want to hear it from her. She turned back to Nora expectantly. Nora's mind went blank. She and Damien had rehearsed basic facts about their fake relationship, but they hadn't covered intimate details. It was unexpected, she said slowly. The best ones always are, Rose encouraged. We were at the market again, Nora continued, the lie forming as she spoke. It was closing time, and Damien was helping me pack up my things. A sudden gust of wind knocked over my display, and we both reached for the same necklace. Our hands touched, and when we looked up, she glanced at Damien, who was watching her with an unreadable expression. He kissed me right there in the middle of the chaos, she finished softly. With jewelry scattered everywhere, and vendors shouting around us, it was perfect in its imperfection. Rose sighed contentedly. Oh, that sounds just like something he would do. Always finding beauty in the mess. Later, as they walked to the parking garage, Damien was unusually quiet. You okay? Nora asked. That story about our first kiss, he said. It sounded so real. That's the point, isn't it? He stopped walking and turned to face her. It's strange that I almost wish it had happened that way. or something in his voice that made Nora's heart skip. She'd been trying to ignore the growing attraction she felt toward him. The way her pulse quickened when he smiled, the comfort she found in their easy conversations during their daily drives to the hospital. "Damien, I know this is complicated," he interrupted. "I know this isn't real. Spending time with you these past few days, seeing how gentle you are with Rose, how you light up when you talk about your art. I keep forgetting this is pretend." Nora felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. "We can't do this. This is business, remember? I'm helping you, you're paying me. That's all, is it?" He stepped closer. "Because the way you look at me sometimes, the way you hold my hand when Rose isn't even watching, it doesn't feel like business." Before she could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Rose's doctor. "Mr. Cross, I'm afraid I have some difficult news. Your grandmother's condition has taken a turn. You should come back to the hospital immediately." They ran back through the corridors they'd just left, arriving at Rose's room to find it filled with medical equipment and concerned faces. Rose looked smaller somehow, more fragile, connected to machines that beeped and hummed with mechanical persistence. "What happened?" Damien asked the doctor. "Her kidneys are failing faster than we anticipated. We're making her as comfortable as possible." But the doctor's expression said what his words didn't. Rose's eyes fluttered open when she heard Damien's voice. "There you are," she whispered. "I was afraid you'd left." "Never," Damien said, taking her hand. "I'm right here, both of you." Nora moved to Rose's other side. "I'm here too, Grandma." Rose smiled weakly. "Good, I need to tell you something important." She looked between them with effort. "I know." Damien's face went white. "Know what?" "About your arrangement. About the money." Rose's voice was barely audible, but her words cut through the room like thunder. "Did you think I was born yesterday? I've been watching people my whole life, and I know the difference between love and performance." Nora felt the blood drain from her face. She started to pull away, but Rose's grip tightened surprisingly. "Don't you dare leave," Rose said, with more strength than she should have had. "Sit down, both of you. We need to talk." They sat in stunned silence, waiting for Rose to continue. "I've known from the first day, the way you held hands like you were afraid to touch each other. The careful way you spoke about your relationship. The fact that you, Damien, who never lies to me, suddenly became vague about details. Grandmother, I can explain. You don't need to explain anything. I understand exactly why you did it." Rose's eyes filled with tears. "You wanted to give a dying old woman some happiness? You wanted me to believe you'd found love before I left you." Nora felt tears starting in her own eyes. "We never meant to hurt you." "Hurt me? Oh, my dear girl, you've given me the greatest gift." Rose looked between them with a smile that transformed her tired face. "You've shown me that my grandson has a heart capable of love, even if he doesn't know it yet. And you've shown me what kind of woman could make him happy, even if you don't realize it either." The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of Rose's monitors. Damien stared at his grandmother in shock, while Nora felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "You knew the whole time?" Damien finally managed. Rose chuckled weakly. "Darling, I may be dying, but I'm not blind. You think I didn't notice how Nora's clothes never fit quite right for someone supposedly dating a millionaire? Or how she flinched every time someone mentioned expensive restaurants? Man, you, my dear. Boy, you've never been able to lie to me successfully." Nora started to stand. "I should go. I'm sorry, Rose. We never should have sit down." Rose's voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent decades getting people to listen. "I'm not finished. Stop calling me Rose. I told you to call me Grandma Rose, and I meant it." Nora sank back into her chair, confused. "Now," Rose continued, "let me tell you what I observed while you two were busy pretending. Damien, you smile more in one day with Nora than you have in the past year. And not that polite smile you give everyone else. The real one. The one that reaches your eyes." Damien opened his mouth to protest, but Rose held up a trembling hand. "And Nora, sweet girl, you look at my grandson like he hung the moon? Then catch yourself and remember you're acting? But love isn't something you can fake. Not really. Shows in 1,000 little ways, but we're not. Nora started. In love? Are you sure about that? Rose's eyes twinkled despite her exhaustion. Let me tell you what I see. I see two people who've been hurt by life, who've built walls around their hearts. I see a man who's forgotten how to trust his own feelings, and a woman who's convinced. Herself, she doesn't deserve happiness. The machines continued their electronic symphony, while Rose gathered her strength to continue. Damien, tell me honestly, when you're with Nora, how do you feel? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. I can breathe, he said finally. Like I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not. Like maybe I'm not as broken as I thought. And Nora, what does my grandson mean to you? Nora felt, tears threatening again. He makes me remember what it feels like to dream beyond just surviving. When he talks about his business, his eyes light up, and I remember what passion looks like. When he's gentle with you, I see the kind of man I never thought really existed. Rose nodded with satisfaction. You're both too stubborn and scared to admit what's right in front of you? Grandma Rose, Damien said softly, even if what you're saying is true, this started as a lie. How can anything real come from that? Oh, my foolish boy. The circumstances were a lie, but the feelings are real. Do you think it matters how you met? Do you think love cares about the story you tell? A knock at the door interrupted them. Nurse peered in apologetically. I'm sorry, but the patient needs rest. Family can stay, but ... She is family, Rose said firmly, before anyone could speak. Nora is family. After the nurse left, Rose turned serious. I don't have much time left. Days maybe, and I have a dying wish. Both Damien and Nora leaned forward. I want you to stop lying to yourselves. I want you to try, really try, to see what I see. Not because a dying old woman asked you to, but because you both deserve happiness. Grandmother, promise me. No. Of you, promise me you'll give this a real chance. Nora looked at Damien, seeing her own fear and hope reflected in his eyes. The man who had started as a desperate stranger had become someone she looked forward to seeing every day. Someone whose laugh made her heart race, and whose gentle care for his grandmother showed her the depth of his character. I promise, whispered Damien. He reached across Rose's bed and took Nora's hand, not for show this time, but because he wanted to. I promise, grandmother. Rose smiled and closed her eyes, looking more peaceful than she had in days. Dead now, I'm tired, and you two have a lot to figure out. But before you go, Nora, come here. Nora leaned closer, and Rose whispered in her ear. He's been carrying his parents' engagement ring in his wallet for 3 years, waiting for the right person. Just thought you should know. As they left the hospital that night, the city lights blurred through Nora's tears. Everything had changed in the space of one conversation. The comfortable boundaries of their arrangement had dissolved, leaving them in uncharted territory. Did you mean it? Damien asked as they stood by his car. The promise. Did you? Instead of answering with words, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It wasn't desperate or passionate, but soft and questioning, like he was asking permission for something that had been building between them for days. When they broke apart, Nora rested her forehead against his. This is crazy, she whispered. Completely insane, he agreed. What if it doesn't work? What if it does? Rose passed away peacefully 3 days later, with Damien and Nora holding her hands. Her last words were about the beautiful garden she was going to plant in heaven and how she expected them to name their first daughter after her. The funeral was small, but filled with people whose lives Rose had touched. Nora found herself genuinely mourning the loss of a woman who had become family in just 2 weeks, who had seen through their deception but loved them anyway. After the service, as people shared memories and offered condolences, Nora overheard several conversations that made her realize how much Rose had talked about her supposed granddaughter-in-law. To everyone who would listen, Rose had described Nora's art, her kindness, her strength. Gosh, she had painted a picture of a woman worthy of her beloved grandson, and somehow, in the telling, had made it true. She really loved you, said Mrs. Patterson. Rose's longtime neighbor? She was so excited about the engagement. She kept saying she could finally rest easy knowing Damien had found his person. Nora's heart clenched. Even in death, Rose was still matchmaking. A week later, Damien helped Nora move out of her tiny apartment and into a beautiful loft space that could serve as both home and art studio. He insisted it was practical. She needed better workspace for her jewelry, and he had more space than he knew what to do with. But the way he'd carefully set up her tools and displayed her best pieces told a different story. "You don't have to do all this," Nora said, watching him hang her latest creation near the window where the light would catch it perfectly. "I want to," he replied simply.
Ow.
Rose was right about a lot of things, but she was especially right about you deserving happiness. They were learning each other slowly, carefully. Damien discovered that Nora sang while she worked and that she collected vintage teacups from thrift stores. Nora learned that Damien cooked when he was stressed and that he'd kept every letter Rose had ever written him. 6 months after Rose's funeral, Damien proposed for real. Not in desperation in a rainy market, but in the art studio she'd helped him create, surrounded by the beauty she made from broken things.